So have you experienced a relationship breakdown within your family? Social media has been buzzing with chatter about the breakdown in the relationship between David and Victoria Beckham and their eldest son, Brooklyn, who released a statement saying he doesn't want a reconciliation. In a series of posts on Instagram, Brooklyn Peltz Beckham accused his parents of attacking him in the press, saying they tried endlessly to ruin his relationship with his wife. The lengthy statement addresses speculation about the feud that has been swirling in the press for a while. The BBC has contacted Sir David and Lady Beckham's reps for comment, and the pair have never acknowledged the rift directly. But David did have some rather interesting things to say on the business show Squawk Box on CNBC yesterday. Let's have a listen.
I've always spoke about, social media and the power of social media, for the good and for the bad. The bad we've talked about with what kids can access these days, and it can be dangerous. But what I've found personally, especially with my kids as well, use it for the right reasons. I've been able to use my platform and my following, for UNICEF. And it's been the biggest tool to make people aware of what's going on around the world for children. And I've tried to do the same. I've tried to do the same with my children, to educate them. They make mistakes. Children are allowed to make mistakes. That's how they learn. So that's what I try to teach my kids. But, you have to sometimes let them make those mistakes as well.
So that's Sir David Beckham there, not speaking directly about his relationship with his eldest son, but talking more generally about young people and social media. So can broken relationships be repaired? Relationship expert Teresha Young is with me this morning to talk about just that. Good morning, Teresha. How are you today?
Good morning, Lucy. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. I mean, everyone is talking, of course, about the problems with the Beckham family at the moment, which have been very well documented by Brooklyn on his social media. But is it possible that reconciliation within a family can happen?
I absolutely believe it can. And I think we need to start normalising that family conflict can exist.
Yeah.
The difference is that what they are experiencing, often families experience privately. It's just that it's so high profile that it's under public scrutiny. However, family differences and periods of tension are far more common than people realise, even in close, loving families. It can be repaired. It does take the willingness of all parties, however, to want that reconciliation. It's not a one-way street. So it's really about understanding what is important in that dynamic and where they want to go going forward.
Yeah, and how do you navigate that? Because there'll obviously be maybe one side that want to reconcile more than the other. What does that one side need to do in order to maybe have the highest hope of that actually happening?
Yes, so the side that probably doesn't want to reconsider or is thinking about, is this for me, is probably the one who's feeling quite deeply wounded. So it's understanding where that wound is coming from and what triggered it. So it's all about sometimes just giving some space and understanding that things aren't always going to return to how they were before. It's about meeting everybody where they are now. So some of the most constructive, respectful steps we can do is just to allow some space.
Okay.
Allow some time and to actually have a conversation when it feels like the right thing to do, because quite often we want to fix things, but it's so raw in that moment. It's not the time to have a conversation. Everybody's feeling quite wounded and heated. So allow some time, because then you can approach the conversation at a better time and have patience with it, because not all repair work is going to be done quickly.
No, and there is a thing, I guess, with social media as well being such a prominent thing that we use all the time, day in, day out, that people do often go to social media and vent their personal grievances.
Yes.
Would you say that's even more damaging?
It can be, because you can't take that back. Once you've seen people take their screenshot, there's no way you can get back from that. So what is understanding that in the heat of the moment, that we can go out there and use social media to, sometimes people say, air our dirty laundry, whatever that might be. However, it's understanding what the repercussions are. It's the power of the pause, Lucy. If we could all just take a moment just to sit before we take that action, and also think about how it's going to impact on other people, and what potential damage it could be done by that action, then I think it will stop us from making such rushed and rash decisions. As well. So it's just that moment of pause. Now, I'm saying things can be repaired. It can be if all parties want to be able to. But it's understanding that it's not about blaming. It's not about who was right, who was wrong. It's actually understanding how people felt in that moment. And it's really important to tap into the feeling, because you can't tell somebody how they feel. You can't tell someone to stop feeling a certain way.
And there's no wrong or rights, I think, when it comes to family relationships. It's not like we have a rule book and we say, well, you did this, that means you're in the wrong. You did that, that means you're right. Yeah. It's very personal, isn't it?
It is completely. But we can be quite defensive, especially when we are feeling hurt.
Of course.
And so it's easy to say, you're right, I'm wrong. But it's not about that at all. It really is, I felt unheard, or I felt pushed out. I felt upset when this happened, because that can actually, because we have a tendency to say, you made me feel a certain way, you did this, and that's so finger pointing. But if we can step back and to say, I felt when this happened, and open it up for conversation.
And is it, obviously we've talked about giving space, which is very, very important. But once you've had that space and that time to think and perhaps cool down a little bit and rationalise your own thoughts and hope that maybe that the person you're having a bit of a to-do with has rationalised theirs as well, what do you do next? How do you then take the next step to reconciliation?
So the next step would be to open up for conversation, invite a conversation to take place. Now, you could even maybe send a message, a call, whatever it feels appropriate for your situation. Invite a conversation to say, I hear what has happened. I acknowledge what has happened. Would you be open to? Invite the conversation. They could still come back and say, no, not for me. Fine, sit back. More space. If you still feel called to have another conversation, try again a bit later on, but don't hound the person because they're certainly feeling a certain way. I would always try, but also consider external support too. There could be a mediator, a counsellor, a therapist, or a coach like myself that could help to actually bring parties together if that feels safer for that dynamic.
And even after all is said and done, and maybe you've tried everything you can to reconcile and you're still, you're not getting any response back, or they're clearly not interested in reconciling with you, can you then move on to live happily without being in contact with that family member? Yeah,
because Lucy, what you're referring to or alluding to there is the grief process, because now you're going to have to start grieving something. You've lost something. And the grief can come in certain forms and relationships. So it's a kind of getting to the stage where you are accepting that perhaps that relationship may never be the same, or there may never be a relationship. And that's a grief process. So that takes some healing, that takes some understanding and some self-love and self-care so that you're able to actually move through that stage and to be able to deal with that loss. You can find fulfillment. You can find happiness. Yeah. It just may look different, and being very gentle with it, because it can really hurt. It can really hurt, especially when relationships aren't repairable or they don't get repaired. It is that sense of grief, but looking after yourself and taking care of yourself is so important during that time.
Yeah, especially so if it's with the parents, with people that brought you into this world, the unimaginable grief that comes with not being able to reconcile with them must be incredibly tough.
It is, really, really. And this is when sometimes it's a case of just writing it out. No, journaling, there's a power of journaling, which you just write down your thoughts, write down your emotions, even write them a letter, perhaps, that you don't send to them, just to explain how you're feeling. And this is why also support groups, family, friends, people outside of that dynamic can really be helpful in that time to help you move through that situation.
Teresha Young, relationship expert, thank you so much for joining me on the show this morning. An absolutely fascinating and very insightful chat. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
You too. Take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.